Hi everyone, my name is Simon Mishevich from Optimised Accountants, and in this video I'm talking about the 40% pension tax that's going to impact many families from April 2027. And in this video we're talking about part 4, which is leave the UK. Like I have, I've moved from the UK to Spain to avoid inheritance tax. However, I've been hit with some other news about business property relief, which may be subject to inheritance tax on my business now, which it wasn't before. So even I have got some planning to do around that. And I'm going to take you through my journey about tax planning on another channel. I created this video because I created this video, 87% UK tax on pensions on April 2027. And I have to say, it's probably been one of the most viewed videos that I've created. And as a result, I decided to create a new service called UK Inheritance Tax Advice, which you can see on that QR code. And the reason why I created this is simply because I thought, well, I'm sick and tired of the government telling people to invest inside of pensions for their future lives and now pull the rug from underneath their feet. And I can see from the comments made on that video where there's a lot of worried people. So I've built these 4 videos and a new service to help people to reduce the impact of pension tax from April 2027. Okay, so this is Geoff. We're now in 2027. He's 60, he's retired, he's worked all his life after being told by the governments to put money into pensions and we won't touch it. Right. Now they have clearly pulled the rug from his feet. He's got critical illness, so he's got 6 to 12 months left to live. Okay, so for Geoff, this whole video, I think will escape him. He won't be able to do it because to move to a different country, you have to sever all ties. He's not going to have the opportunity. So Geoff is really stuck in this. Now you might want to look at my other 3 videos, but I want to bring this to your attention because some of the advice that I can give can help many people. So if Geoff was 50, 60 and fit and well, then he can definitely make a transition to a different country. He has 2 children. His wife passed away 2 years ago, and now he's been told that his remaining pension of £250,000 is subject to inheritance tax. And that was informed on April 2024. So it says here, pensions in the UK will be subject to inheritance tax starting in April 2027. So he's been slapped really because he's been told he can invest in his pension and now he's going to be taxed on it. And before I continue, the one thing I would say is that there's been a lot of negative comments talking about, well, you shouldn't pass it on to your children, they didn't earn it, blah, blah, blah. And I have to say, just going back to this point, of Geoff passing assets to his children when he's only got 6 to 12 months. Listen guys, this guy, Geoff may well have been looking to live the rest of his days from his pension and spend all his money. But Geoff can't help having critical illness. And I do find that the comments from keyboard warriors recently, where they just think they can say anything and just be, I'll say what I like, I've got my opinion, and I'll just slate everyone, which seems a disconnection in the UK right now, which I feel really negative about the whole place. I know the UK was quite negative anyway. If you talk about bringing people down to their level rather than building themselves up, that happens, especially with people with money. They don't deserve the money. Well, you don't deserve to get the benefits. Let's be fair about it. So the point here is that Geoff has no choice about this inheritance tax and on his pensions. And I feel really sorry for many families because they are going to face this challenge and there's not much they can do about it. There is quite a bit that I've identified to help families. I've been thinking about long and hard about different ways of mitigating inheritance tax. And to be honest, I've been doing this service for about 3-4 years, but now I just want to bring a service that can really help you. So there it is anyway. So let's think about this. I'm going to ignore the assets, ignore the home where you're renting. So this is just going to be talking about pensions for now. £125,000, investments, £300,000, total assets of £425,000. The excess of £325,000 You might say, well, 425,000 is more than 325,000. You've got that wrong. Well, pensions was not inside the scope of inheritance tax. So even though its total assets were 425, only the £300,000 would have been looked at for inheritance tax. And because that's less than £325,000, it's actually zero. After 2027, of course, you're adding it all up and everything is subject to inheritance tax. So now we've got an excess of £100,000. Poor old Geoff knows this. He hasn't got long to live. What could he have done? There are other options, of course. I want to bring into some aspects of where Geoff probably could do something whereby he could still disconnect. But for most people that have got critical illness, they want to stay in the country that they're residing in. But for other people that are able-bodied, I do strongly recommend you look at different countries and look at countries where you can enjoy your life. And what I've done here, I've brought in countries with no inheritance tax. I've not looked at income tax. I've not looked at capital gains tax. I've just looked at countries with no inheritance tax currently. English-speaking countries, you've got Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and South Africa. Now, I've got to be honest with you, I've been to South Africa. I've not had the enjoyment of New Zealand and Australia. That's on my plans, that's on my bucket list. But I've heard people go to Australia and love it. I've heard people go to Australia and hated it. Again, each of those countries, you just need to investigate it. If you're able-bodied, maybe now is the time to leave countries. Of course, these countries are pretty far away from the UK. So that makes it really difficult for you to move to these countries just to avoid inheritance tax. I get that. But there is also the point I'm making here about quality of life. That's why I moved from the United Kingdom to Spain, because I had enough of the way that the government was running the country, even before Labour Party, to be fair. Countries with no or little inheritance tax, you've got Singapore, very beautiful country, very well maintained, I have to say. Dubai, zero tax, income tax, capital gains tax, very attractive for many people that want to let go of all taxes. Spain, I mean, depending on the location, I know some people will say you don't know what you're talking about. Hey, I live in Spain, I do. And we have a Spanish lawyer now working in a firm. So actually, Spain is good for inheritance tax if you live in Madrid or in Andalusia, where it's 1% over 1 million euros, right? So that's a lot better than the United Kingdom. There are other parts of Spain where inheritance tax is still quite high. So you need to choose, because in Spain you have 17 autonomous regions. You need to choose the right region for you to avoid inheritance tax. Hong Kong, which I've been to many times, I have lots of friends there. And it's great again, because there's no capital gains tax, there's no inheritance tax, and income tax is little as 16-17%. What's not to enjoy about that? So here I'm going to be talking about net assets. Again, we're talking about Geoff. Unfortunately, he's got critical illness. He's not going to be able to take a choice. But do your parents, do you have a choice of going to a country where you're treated best? Now, if you heard that phrase before, that's because that phrase is used quite often by nomad capitalists. So big shout out to them. But they are right. Go to a country where you're treated best is probably the right thing here. So here we've got UK pensions. There's not much you could do about pensions, by the way. But if you take your non-UK assets and you transfer them out of the UK and then into another country like Spain, then your money's not tied up in the UK. It's not subject to UK inheritance tax if you sever all ties between the UK. Now, there are rules around this, by the way, of if you're in the UK and you're there in the UK for 10 out of the last 20 years, that's a big thing. And again, we can help you with that. But there are ways of severing your domicile status in the United Kingdom. So come and speak to us about that. Total assets is £400,000. Subject to IHT is zero before 2027 and after 2027. And the reason for that is because that slither of £300,000 is no longer in the UK. You've taken the money out. It's now in the country or where you are going to be living in the future. So how about that? Move to a country which has got better climate, like Spain. Go to a country where the food is better, like Spain. Come come and join us. We'll show you around. But it will help you to reduce inheritance tax quite significantly. So you owe it to yourself. You've worked hard in the UK. Now you've been the rug's been pulled under your feet from the Labour Party. Pension tax is upon us. Time to leave and pay no inheritance tax. And actually, there are ways to enjoy life in a warmer climate and actually pay less income tax, capital gains tax as well. So how do you break ties with the UK? So sell UK assets, investments, and close your bank accounts. That's probably one of the biggest demonstrations. To do that, consider where to be buried. I've put Richard Burton in here because in your will, you need to say, I'm going to be buried or cremated in this location in this country. Why? Because if you don't, then HMRC could say, well, you always intended to come back to the UK, which means you are retaining your domicile no matter how many years you're outside of the UK. And if you don't believe that, Google Richard Burton and put in UK inheritance tax, because there, Richard Burton specified that he wanted his ashes to be spread in Wales and then laid to rest there. The issue with that is that he died in the United States and his ashes were brought back into Wales in the United Kingdom. And now also the HMRC came on top of that and said, well, yeah, that's great. We'll have his 40% tax on his worldwide assets. How wrong is that? He actually died in another country, didn't really spend much time in the UK beyond having his letter of wishes saying, I want my ashes to be buried, to be scattered there. That was his only fault, but it was a big fault, unfortunately. And why would he know any difference, right? Maybe he didn't get some advice on that. Maybe no one would have thought about HMRC attacking someone when they're dead and then going for their assets. I mean, that just shows you how unscrupulous HMRC really are. And then on top of that, you need to think of wills and power of attorney in the new country. So if you're going to a place like Spain, like I have, then you need to make sure you have a will and a power of attorney. And again, the will and power of attorney says, I'm going to be living the rest of my days here. This is where I want my assets to be distributed, and I want to be buried in this location. I want to be cremated in this location of Spain, not the UK, because you want to break all ties with the United Kingdom to prevent inheritance tax falling upon you.